Oh, it was a dark place. I didn't have a job. I moved from California to Washington and took a social work job that was just horrendous. And it was not what I wanted to do. It was it's terribly organized, and I left my family and all my friends. The weather was impacting me. I was used to a sunny climate, and I was not doing well.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's been a day. Dealt with some tech issues, so working on a homebrew project, and just every nightmare option that you could think of, assembling 2600 carts happened.
Wow. So you are currently assembling 2600 carts, a game that you've developed?
Yeah, I bought the distribution rights, but I was also a part of it, and working with Gematronic is kind of a known publisher of some smaller games, and Jason's a great programmer, and so I sold some carts a long time ago, and I do these at expos. I make small batches of these, and anybody thinking about, hey, that's a great idea. It is a good idea, but assembling 40-year-old, 35 plus year old carts, and assembling them in a shell and getting it just right, and there's lots of little issues and nuances dealing with old technology. So it's more hobbyist than anything. It's fun.
Yeah.
I've done worked with several other projects over the years, some for charity, others not, just to do, and I enjoy doing it. But boy, I've had a real trouble with this one in particular. But it's whatever. It comes with the territory.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole fun also working with and playing with old tech. We can see a bunch of cabinets in your background here
Yeah.
as well. I'm sure these had their technical issues over the years, right?
Well, these are just the one-up cabs. That's kind of why I go
Okay.
with them.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm okay with this is because they're easy to fix.
Yeah.
A little tiny board, a screen, a panel. It's all modern stuff. When you deal with stuff that's old, like good example. I bought an Osborne computer. I don't expect anybody to know that, but it's one of the first luggable computers, even before laptops and portables. And I went on to a forum because I know that I wasn't specialized in that particular. And people told me 8-bit guy covered it. You can't turn them on for a duration of time. The capacitors inside will smoke and pop, and it'll be toxic. And so I know a guy in Portland, so I have to drive it now to Portland and have it serviced before I can even power it on.
Wow.
So I mean, that's money and it's time, and
Yeah.
it's I wanted to get this local this computer, this really hard to get computer from a pawn store, because it was just sitting there for a couple months, and I didn't have one, and it works, but I'm not, I want it to be safe, and there's every little console and computer has its little things that you have to really research sometimes, especially when it's old, because things go out and your head scratches. For the average person, the average Joe, they just throw it out saying, it doesn't work right. And that's happening all the time, and that's a problem because some rare things are being thrown out, and the physical representation of certain items is getting slim. And my whole purpose of this crazy collection I've amassed is to eventually have it in the public, and I'm really not trying to get everything, but I want to get just a couple things, that are representing the entire, this is what video games is to me.
Yeah. Well, before we go deeper, because you've inspired me to collect more.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you've inspired a lot of people out there. If you've, been even close to the retro gaming community, the person we're talking to today. If you don't, let me introduce him. He has 135,000 followers across all social media. He's been on YouTube for over 12 years. He's a legend, like I said, in the retro community. He does outrageous console reviews, console comparison. To me, he's the godfather of retro collecting. the immortal John Hancock is with us today. John, thank you so much for doing this podcast episode, this interview with us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Always happy to talk games, and I've been doing this a long time, even before YouTube. Been collecting 30 plus years. Started, and it all depends on when does someone start collecting? Well, collecting to me is defined by having more games than you play.
True. That's a good way to put it.
It would be an easy way, and so it's hard to say. You know, I'm 46, so I really started collecting in my teenage years when I was able to pay for games with my own money, doing odd jobs. My first job, I was working at a grocery store, and but you know, I was doing mowing lawns and odd things to gather money to go to flea marts and collecting cards. And not, you know, back then it was just, you know, games was a thing, but it wasn't the thing for me. And I've stuck with it. It's a hobby that I've stick with, and you know, I've seen people come and go and trends come and go, and I've tried to continue to keep it kind of alive for me, and that's a path that many people don't take. I see a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people selling right now. I think classic retro games is changing for the general public. There's always going to be the crazy collectors out there, but you know, it's tough right now. You know, gas prices almost $6 in certain areas, and
Yep.
and inflation's high, and I'm just here just to say, hey, this is my thing. This is what I'm into. Happy to talk games, and anybody want to listen, great.
Do you have any type of like thoughts of selling some of your collection?
No.
No?
No, it never was. No, never. My job, my goal is to get this out of my house. You know, it really is. I'm at capacity. I've been at capacity for a while. I'm going to do an announcement at PRGE kind of talking about that phase, you know, the museum and all that. It's a long-term project. People don't realize how crazy and ambitious it is, and there's many challenges ahead of me. But my purpose has always been to have a public area to represent games. And you know, I don't even consider this my collection really mine anymore. I'm curating it, but it's gone beyond all that. Like, monetary value has never been a thing for me. That's not why I collect. That's not why I take some of my collection and display it at PRGE on an annual basis, or share things. Other people, it is. It's a business. It's a livelihood. For me, it's not.
I can believe that, because I think as a teenager, if you're starting collecting, you don't really do it for the money. It would be hard to imagine someone saying like, oh yeah, in 20 years it's gonna be worth, you know, 10 times this or 100 times that. So it seems to be, and it transpires when we listen to you, when we look at what you're doing, the content you produce. It comes with passion. And I have something to say. When I started collecting 8 years ago, maybe even more now, time flies, right? But it's been about 8, maybe to 10 years. I started being very interested in like learning more about the games that were kind of like the most collectible, or the ones I should start with, and so on. And guess what I did? I went to your website and I bought a copy of your DVD that oh yeah, the DVD that you produced,
the nuts
homemade,
and bolts of video game collecting.
Yeah,
I got backstory about that if you want to know.
I want to know.
Okay. So Crazy's backstory of that was pre-YouTube, and so really the purpose of that. Now bear in mind, you know, YouTube, yeah, it generates a little bit of revenue, and I've done things to generate revenue, but my collecting in general is not for that. And so long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, this is pre-YouTube for me, I wanted to, people says, well, you ought to do a YouTube. I'm like, I don't know. People kept bugging me, you do YouTube, when YouTube was really early on. And I didn't want to. But even before then, I wanted to share my knowledge about games. And so I was not a film guy. I didn't even have a tripod. I had like a digital Fujifilm camera. I think that's what I recorded it on. And I would take these and I would film just some of my collection. and then bring that to, at the time, classic gaming expos were the big expos for collectors in the United States. This is before almost everything. Philly Classic was going on. It was called, that was what Too Many Games I think turned into. So Philly Classic, a long time ago, been around a long time, but there wasn't many shows. There was collector groups. The Northwest Classic Games Enthusiast was in Seattle, and they were doing little mini shows. And then the big one that started was the World of Atari, which is 1999, and then that turned into Classic Gaming Expo, CGE, and then those people then did the NVM, the National Video Game Museum. So that's the connection there, if you follow that.
Right.
But anyways, I used to take these DVD sets and bring them to Classic Gaming Expo and online Nintendo Age, and sell them in volumes. And then eventually PRGE, a long time ago, early 2000s, I offered a couple volumes there. I did a whole set, and that included TurboGrafx and Neo Geo, which I haven't uploaded on my channel because I look back at the video and the video is terrible. but at the time it was fun to do, and
it was good.
It generated. I
enjoyed it.
It was informational. If you get beyond the technical issues with it, it was informational for collectors. People thank me. Tom Kalinske wanted one, and I was nervous because it's like, the president of Sega, one of the best panels I've ever went to at PRGE, wonderful guy, and I gave him one, and that was cool. That was like the highlight of doing all those. And other people, programmers and stuff, wanted them, and I did. Thank you. But I mean, that's the background of that, is that I wanted to make those for expos and shows, and just to generate some scratch money to buy some games. And then what's evolved from that is now the homebrew carts, which is what I do now. And so that's a little bit, I think, just something as a souvenir, a memento, or something for people that follow me on the channel or know me or something, and pays for my food on expos and stuff. It's expensive. Travel is expensive, and so.
Well, I think I got 2 copies too, because I think there was like one DVD that wasn't playing, and you just like I remember emailing you, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'll send you another one, and you just sent me the whole thing, once more. So I got like almost two copies for myself. They're in the box. I'm keeping them forever. They're part of my collection, honestly, man.
And I'm never doing those again. So that's like
exactly
kind of a thing. One thing I like to do is I don't like doing tons of numbered stuff, but that's kind of a phase for me. And like for me, I just do YouTube now, and I uploaded most of those on my channel, and the ones that I feel are helpful. And then that's anybody with those DVD sets. That's like there's no more being made. So
exactly, and they were, you mentioned, like they were meant for education purposes.
Yes.
And that's why I think we bought it, because like I couldn't care less about, I'm not looking for a flashy presentation about, retro gaming. I'm here to learn from the master himself, who's been doing it for, at the time, 20 plus years already. I'm coming in with 0 years of experience, and I'm there to get your knowledge out of this DVD set, right? And that's what I got. I mean, you made me spend a lot of money. But I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people in the community. Like, do you know someone that has shared with you how they've you've inspired them to become a collector?
Yeah, I appreciate that. People have, and I'm honored, and hopefully it's in a positive way, and education was always the focal point of those. I think I was selling for like $30. They were taking so long to make, like 6 to 8 DVDs with labels, and it became kind of a monster to produce those. And so once then I started realizing I need to just make a YouTube channel. Eventually, people were bugging me. I was on Metal Jesus Rocks channel and other Gamester 81, Happy Console Gamer. Those are some of the early people that I was guest on. And then I eventually just went and did my own thing. But going back to your question, yeah, I've had a couple people saying you've inspired me. It's always nice to hear. That's my goal is to, in a positive way, help other collectors out, or just talk about things or talk about products. Inform people. I'm kind of a dinosaur on YouTube. I know that, and You know, I've been doing this a long time, and you know, I did 3 videos every week for years through COVID, through the entire COVID. I did 3 videos a week. I'm most proud of that, believe it or not. Just that I kept a consistent basis of just trying to upload videos and share knowledge, share ideas, share weird things. One thing that you'll know about me is that I try to go off mainstream now, just because the majority of there's wonderful content creators out there and they do awesome stuff, but what happens is the majority, the cream of the crop, cover the mainstream stuff: Atari, Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation. Well, and maybe not Atari as much, but you know, the stuff that gets the views. And for me, you know, if I really wanted views, I wouldn't do video games, because that's like, you know, really tiny portion of mainstream audience. And so I like to delve into the oddball stuff. That's really what I like to pursue now. But I want to cover everything. I want to say, hey, this is what a part of a set is, or this is this. I got some cool oddball stuff coming up, and so really excited about sharing some of that. But I want to help collectors out. I'm happy to talk collecting. I do many panels at expos about collecting, and just did one up in Canada this last month, and that was a lot
Wait, I
of
missed
fun.
it, or was it?
Vancouver Retro Gaming Expo.
Okay, that's a bit far from me. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Montreal, so.
That's all right. Yeah. Had a guy fly from Montreal for the panel. That was crazy. He flew for the panel, watched it, and then jetted back. It was nuts.
I mean,
but
yeah,
I like
sure, it
going
was
to,
worth it.
I like going to expos, but it's tough, you know, going across the United States. I'm a teacher by day. And
Where does
so,
that come
you know,
from? I don't mean to intrude, but where does that come from? That kind of, you wanting to educate. You don't care about making money. You just, you know, inherently want to give back.
I was a social worker for 10 years, community mental health. I come from a family of teachers and doctors. So I think part of it is I'm kind of wired to help others. I did charity work for a decade. I did a Cal's Gamers for Kids. It was a charity event, 100% for charity. Raised $100,000 for 2 local nonprofits. I don't know. Like, it doesn't fulfill me. If I'm going to spend this much time doing something, it can't be just my job. I think I would hate it. I think if I was just doing this for money, I'd hate it. I mean, that's why I don't do modern gaming, because I think that would become a grind. I do modern gaming because of stuff I care about, but my cup has to get filled at the end of the day, and that's kind of why I've kept my topics on my channel so broad, because then I get bored or something, I'll just jump to something else and then talk about that. And I don't know, like, I think part of it I give it to my parents. My dad was a lung doctor, he was a pulmonary care practitioner, and my mom was a medical assistant and a teacher's aide. But they gave quite a bit, you know, to public service, and part of that's that. I've always had a reasonable day job that, you know, paid the bills. It's not going to make me rich. Have a master's, and so I could pursue other things for more money, but more money doesn't make you more happy. I learned early on that, and I've seen people with more money and they weren't happier. The happiest I am is when I'm talking to someone in a small group about video games. You know, like this right here. This is great. I would love to do that for the rest of my life, and hopefully I can. You know, that's what fills my cup, is talking about games, and it's not really I mean, money and monetary values, things, and expensive stuff, that's going to be along with the territory, and I've learned to separate that. That doesn't make it evil, but that's not my focal point. It's just because that's not what fills my cup. And you know, if people have a store, or they sell video games for a living, or that's their thing, or that's their YouTube channel, that's what pays the bills, great. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, for me, I do it just because I like talking about games. That's why I'm here today, man.
You've had a pretty good start so far.
Yeah.
Wanting to do this for the rest of your life, you're on the roll, I'd say. You know.
Hey, as long as people want to listen, I mean,
exactly.
There's going to be a beginning, middle, and end to everything. You know, I think that retro gaming and stuff is peaked. I think for the mainstream, I see that on my channel. Some of my most popular videos are emulator boxes. because I think it gets expensive collecting stuff. But that doesn't mean you can't stop. You can't, people care about video games and classic games. I think the collecting aspect has gotten really expensive. Or, like in my area, a bunch of game stores went bye-bye. And
Yep.
so, like, there's less of that in bulk because we have a society that's moving towards digital. And so, it's harder to go find physical items that are not all picked over or beat up. And that's okay if you find a beat up copy of something and it's cheap. But I'm just happy that there's games expos still going on. There's game stores still around selling physical items, and people are excited about some homebrew product. That's what I really like currently. Really getting into is these aftermarket products that are revitalizing, crazy obscure things, but making them more functional. Like, so that's kind of my current jam, is just seeing stuff like that.
What are your thoughts on like the current state of collecting, I guess, either modern games or remastered old games or reboxed old games, if you will, like the limited run of this world, for example. What are your thoughts on this and the current state of collecting for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Switch is a good example of kind of like a huge market there, where there's many, many companies making physical items. One thing I don't like about Switch on a digital is if you have at least two systems connected, and you try taking that one Switch on the go and it's a digital copy, it has to check like who you are.
Yeah.
If you don't have Wi-Fi, you're host.
Exactly.
So
I was at the cottage the other day, and no electricity for 48 hours. I had my Switch. I wanted to play a game. I had the cartridge. Put it in. It's like, oh, let us check if it's all okay. You played it. What do you mean? Check what? I got the cartridge right there. Yeah. Anyways, I completely get it.
So it's different. It's still a thing. It's huge. I'm so selective. There's so much Switch stuff out there that I can't keep up. I mean, I have a budget like everybody else. And, for me personally, I've kind of climbed any collecting mountain I've wanted to climb. Like, I don't know if I'm going to personally complete another set. What I have to, have, and to start a public collection, I think I've climbed those mountains. Someone else wants to take that on, great. But there's so much Switch stuff in modern gaming, and to me, it's different. It's in a separate category. It doesn't mean it's not exciting, but it is different. I think the play-wise, it's great. But it's kind of it's the foil comic of the 90s. I don't know if you've collected comics back in the day or knew that trend, but 80s comics were great, and then 90s they wanted to make them collectible, so everything started having a foil cover, and it was collector and limited edition and this and that, and everybody started calling their stuff limited edition and collector's edition, and then it kind of just, if something's called a limited edition, it's typically not fully collectible.
Right.
And there's some asterisks there, like the master edition of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is crazy expensive because that's an amazing game. That's the first run of it, and those go for lots of money. And there's stuff here and there that's still collectible, but it's just a different market. It's a different generation. It's different people pursuing that. I like the Switch. I was skeptical and wrong when it came out, and since then I've grown to really like it. But collecting it I'm just on the fence. Like, I like collecting it, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, I got to collect everything. There's so much that comes out for it.
Does it make it harder to collect now? Because back then you had games came out, they weren't being collected back then, right? Yeah. You had a head start on a lot of people. Oh, yeah. And now today you have a lot of Switch games coming out. And then you have all these like third-party companies like Limited Run, or there's plenty of these coming out with their own. So if you want to have a real full set of Switch games, you have to go through a lot of different channels to get them. Does it make it harder, you think?
Yeah, I think collecting is a lot harder now, and I think that it's become something different too. Like when I collected it, I mean, I was like, really, if you're going, like, yeah, I was collecting in my late teen years, but really, let's just stay college, okay? College, we'll just say the starting point for the crazy collection that I started was I gave Buddy $50. And I didn't even know what he was going to pick up. Here's $50. I said, find something interesting. He went to San Jose Flea Mart, came back with an Atari 7800 box with 50 box Atari 7800 and 2600 games for $50. And the problem is now, like, I started the collection because I could go to a flea mart and there was all this stuff that people didn't care about. And at the time, Atari was being collected a lot by the people that were older than me, that had money, that's what they grew up with. And I was kind of the kid collecting that cheap Odyssey 2 stuff and Sega Genesis stuff. Whatever. You collect that silly stuff. But now everything's been marketed towards that collector and value market. It's gotten pretty crazy. And I'm not saying it's all bad, but I'm just saying there's so much of it, it becomes kind of noise. And I don't want to take away from anybody who has a beautiful 360 collection or Xbox One or PS5, PS4, because there's some awesome, really cool stuff out there. It just doesn't, for me, the same. It's not the same. It's not the same for me. It's not necessarily what I grew up with, not my generation. I value and respect it, but it means something different. Not to ramble about that, but I don't know. There's something there. Like when I pick up a physical cartridge of something, 100% of the game's there. It's not checking to see if I'm online. It's not going to have a patch. If it's got a bug or something, it's there forever.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's typically a game I can play in a sitting. It has a different feel. And that's what I really want to celebrate. But there's amazing new modern game stuff out there. Part of the problem, too, is time. Like, there's some wonderful RPGs out there that are being made, or MMOs and stuff. But, gosh, I just don't have the time anymore to jump into those. Even the new Halo. Like, I love the new Halo, but I played it, and then the Skywalker Saga, another Lego Skywalker Saga. It's an amazing game, but holy cow, is that game long and vast, and just, there's so much there. I could spend all year just on that game if I really wanted to.
I agree. The one sitting, I think, is a big deal for me as well. Like, I appreciate these huge games. I've played a lot of them, even in the past 12 months. Ghost of Tsushima is a good one on the PS5 that I played.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, like, when I see a game and I go to how long to beat, for example, and I see it like it could beat in like 2, 3, 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 hours tops, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm happy. Like, that's this good. Weekend, I'm gonna be done with the game, and that's a great thing for me. I'm not thinking like, oh wait, I paid $40 for it, so then like it's like more expensive per the hour. I don't care. At least I'm going to finish it. It's not going to sit on my shelf because I'm going to be like pushing back the time when I'll be, when I'll eventually have time when my kid goes to college at, what's 18 years old or something, so I love that. And we lost that after the, I guess maybe Nintendo 64, even Nintendo 64, there were some long games in there, man. Yeah. Maybe like Super Nintendo, era.
Yeah, and there was a lot of great classic RPGs that came out during that time period. That wasn't my focal point. I love them, like Chrono Trigger, a good example, or Final Fantasy. Those games are great, but that wasn't like, for me, it was like a brawler, an arcade style game, or a shooter or a platformer or something for high score. That's what I kind of pursued. Sega Genesis had a lot of that arcade, Streets of Rage 2. Ghouls and Ghosts, which is an amazing port on Sega Genesis.
That's a hard game, man.
Yes. Beat it with a friend, and just recently beat the Master System version, which has unlimited continues. But we were able to beat it in a couple hours. And I did that in public too. I did that at a 64 bits or less. Showed video on my channel showing us beating it with a good buddy of mine. And you have to go through twice, and it plays different than other versions, but that's a good example of like the sweet spot. It was a challenge, but it was enjoyable, and I could do it with a friend, and we just back and forth play. It was kind of nice to get a break, and it was tough, but it wasn't impossible. And it wasn't just a beat; it was just enjoyable to play that, and to get through it. And how many people have gotten to the end of that? I mean, it's
Not
it's
me.
yeah. I mean, it's you have to be kind of in the zone, and I've done that. I usually beat games with my friend, and we try to go through my crazy collection or his crazy collection. He's got a pretty cool collection. It's very focused. But we try to get stuff, and that's how we keep it alive. And go through stuff and beat stuff or play stuff that we has been sitting on our shelf for a while. And so it's kind of nice to do that. And I try to do that throughout the year, and just to keep it fresh and to keep that passion going and just celebrate gaming. And for me, that's what it's about. And for other people, it's going to be newer stuff or stuff they grew up with. Or I like to go the oddball, the obscure, for sure.
Is that because you talk about being, I guess, nostalgic is one way to put it about certain consoles or platforms? Listeners of this podcast know that I'm most fond of the N64, even though it was not the most technologically advanced system. Controller was terrible, but I couldn't care less. Some of my best experience as a gamer playing Ocarina of Time, which in my mind is the best game ever made.
Great.
GoldenEye adds a lot of fun. Just all these games, but they're all tied to a special time in my life, where I was with my family playing these games, and I don't know, it just a blast, and whenever I play them, I go back in time.
Yeah.
Where do you go when you play certain games?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that, and I like that. I like that question a lot. Going back to this last expo I was at, is an outdoor gaming event, and I get to go to kind of a place where I'm not like on a time schedule. I can go to a place where doesn't matter who you are, you're a game character, and I love that. I love that about games. It's like it's the equilibrium. It's like the equal playing field. I'm not John Hancock. I'm Arthur. In Ghouls and Ghosts or something, or Blaze, or going from, I think, Streets of Rage, or whatever character you want to be. And you just get kind of caught up in that environment and that world, and it's you versus the machine, or you with a buddy versus the machine. And it's a really cool environment that you don't have to think about all the current noise or issues or all the chores or honeydews you got to do, or the stress and anxiety of being a teacher. You can just play a game, and that to me is so rewarding. Thumbing through an actual physical manual, or even seeing a beat up old copy, and that smell that takes me back to like a library, that physical box, that noise when you open up a clamshell, all that. The weird things with consoles, the noise, if one has an intro, Sega, or like PlayStation, or even N64, there's certain sounds. I can hear sounds and be like, you can just go right to that moment of that game. And it doesn't have to be my past or nostalgia, but there's certain games that just really, really nail it. Shredder's Revenge, good example. That really nailed nostalgia and was just a fun game, a good example of like not being too long. You can play with buddies, and games like that really just speak to me, and I really love it when companies or games are like that.
Well, absolutely, and I agree 100%. And it's interesting because you mentioned how retro gaming has peaked earlier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have Dotemu with tribute games that release TMNT Shredder's Revenge, and guess what? They just announced they sold over 1 million copies.
1 million.
I feel so fortunate to have worked well, with these guys and even like with you on this campaign, right, to promote the game.
Absolutely.
But like, it just tells me how there's obviously, quite obviously, still a market for these games. We're talking about like playing games for like one sitting. We're not alone, John. We're not alone. Like, there's plenty of people that still want these, one sitting co-op or even alone, just like nostalgic experiences. I mean, you could, if you shut everything around you when you play this game, you could imagine playing a SNES game.
Yeah, and I think
It's
I agree. I agree 100% with what you're saying. I think really too. I think it's more to the collecting aspect has peaked. The gaming has just gotten even bigger, and I think that what's making it tougher to collect is because modern platforms are doing a better job at offering retro gaming without collecting. That's really what I kind of wanted to allude to earlier. Good example.
Yep.
You know, I can get a Switch and I can get the online service and play my N64, my Genesis, my Super Nintendo, my Nintendo. I can buy a bunch of arcade games that are, Capcom Stadium, another example, $40, and you can get a set of classic arcade games, and they got all the bells and whistles, and that's the game. Collecting, yeah, there's a physical version, I think, on PlayAsia of the first one on that. And there's physical copies of some of these classic games, but it's just different. It's in ways it's harder because you got not just one version of a game now, you got 5 versions of a game, and
Yeah.
and if you want to collect them all, it's like it's overwhelming. Like for me, even I had to make a choice of like, which version of Shredder's Revenge do I get? Do I want to get the crazy big box one that I don't have space for? Or do I want to get the one that's got the VHS slip case, which I thought, oh man, that's awesome. That's speaking to me, so I got that one. But then in the back of my head, it's like, that collector's edition was pretty sweet.
I got the big one, but I don't know where I'm going to put it. That's the thing.
But like, it's a good example. I think it's like, but yes, there is still a market, and just because it's peaked, I think it's peaked because pertaining to the older stuff being so expensive. So many people are priced out of it now that it's like, I'll kind of settle and I'll get some classic game stuff or retro style stuff on a modern platform and call it good.
Yeah.
Or,
we've had a lot of,
or just go the Raspberry Pi or go emulator box,
right?
Or go that route.
Yeah, there's so many options out there for sure, and I think that guys like us, we remember playing those games back then. And for me and a lot of retro gamers, we've had many retro creators on the show. There's a lot, like, it's very nostalgic experience for the younger generation. For my kid, for example,
Yes. Good point.
Now I have a lot of games, and hopefully he's gonna play them. But will it impact him as much as it impacted me back then? In the sense that, will it make him want to keep those games as he gets older to relive those experiences? And my kid has a dad that is collecting, so most kids don't. So will they have that want when they grow older to own the original physical versions of games? So I feel like you've been talking about your museum idea, and I'd love to actually transition into that. Because for me, retro video game collecting almost is, becoming kind of like getting or collecting artifacts, if you will, of a previous era, and not so much like necessarily like something you want to play, unfortunately, to play on the physical media moving forward. So what are your goals with your museum project moving forward? And how do you want this I'll call it a museum project to impact the retro video game community?
I think the number one goal is to have it happen, and it's a long-term project. I don't have a timeline on that, but getting the games out of my house into a public setting means everything for me. My wife doesn't want to deal with my collection. My wife doesn't care about the value of it. I've talked to many game collectors. I know that Sid Bolton, right? Is that a collector up in Canada who died? I bet his family didn't want to deal with that collection when he passed. and it was tough when you're digging through stuff of a deceased family member, and having all that stuff is tough. Now, because people, like, I've talked to my wife about this and was very clear. Hey, while this might be worth something, I know that you don't want to deal with it. So that's the other thing too about the museum, is having it not taken care of, or with a nonprofit, even if it doesn't work out with the museum, it's somewhere. So that's really important to me. The goal is to get it into a public setting. There's so many challenges still ahead with building and all that, but the journey has started. I'll say that. So there'll be a little bit more info at PRGE, but that's really in a nutshell, just like getting my collection out of my house into a public setting, and really happy to collaborate with anybody who can help me with that. And I can be open about that right now. And just like it's going to be a challenge, but I want that. I want that somewhere in the Northwest, a place that celebrates and educates people on, hey, this was a thing. This is what this was. I think if you have a bunch of stuff in a display and you don't have it displayed, you want to educate people on what it is. Why was it important? What is the significance? It can't be just stuff to look at, though. I think there needs to be certain things for people to be able to play, and that has its own issues. Costs and upkeep. I have a buddy that does an outdoor gaming event. He stored 40 TVs, and after a year, 9 didn't work. So there's that aspect, the upkeep and maintenance of stuff that breaks. Things will break, things will go out, and you have to repair them. Well, who is that? Who's going to repair those? And who's a specialist on this? This rare item that costs hundreds of dollars, and shipping it off to another state, and sometimes you have to take it out of its shell. Like, I just had my 5200 serviced. I had to take it out of its shell and mail the PCB board to Midwest, and ship it back and install it, and hopefully nothing broke, and it was great. But there's a lot of those thoughts that go along with that. How do I want it to impact retro gaming? I think I want to be remembered as the person that said he was going to do museum and did it. I mean that's really the challenge of just if I had a mistake, I probably shouldn't have announced it so soon. But that doesn't stop me from my dream and my goal of doing it. And I'm going to do it with help, hopefully, somewhere. And if not me, then it's going to go somewhere and be on public. That's my number one goal. I'm happy to share that now, because it's from my heart, and it's true. And I've started the process, and so that's really just want to talk about it in a bigger setting more about that. But that's kind of where I'm at currently.
So, John, let me ask you, are you going to keep anything from your collection once you've donated the bulk of it, or all of it, I don't know, to your museum?
Very small percentage, like less, probably 3%. Nothing part of a set. Anything that's of importance historically is going. But like probably my FPGA consoles, some multi-carts, something that can fit on a standard library shelf. Like we were talking earlier, my son's kind of a minimalist, ironically, and I want to kind of pursue that. I don't want to have. I've amassed this crazy collection. I don't want that ever again. Like I didn't do it for that. I want like just a simple collection where I can play some games if I want, but like it's a shelf. It's not a room. It's not a wall. It's just kind of there. And if that's a couple emulator boxes and maybe an aftermarket arcade or two, I'm good.
Curated for you.
Just like and maybe like a rental. Maybe I have like a game from my rental store that I grew up with. Maybe I'll keep that. Maybe not. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool to show, like, have a theme of like, here's all the address labels of rental places that are long gone.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It just, to me, like, really looking forward to having a very small game collection. I know that sounds weird, but if you're in my shoes, you would probably be saying the same thing.
No, I can totally relate. Actually, I like I said, I have a much smaller collection than you, but still over 2,000 games, and it doesn't even fit in my house, you know.
Yeah,
And
it gets crazy.
yeah, and I'm like, I got this in boxes.
Yeah.
You know, what's even the point, you know? And so I do want to get it to I don't know, a more manageable size, if you will, right? To be more curated towards my own personal tastes. Only keep the titles that are I'm really fond of. So I can totally relate.
Yeah, I just want to keep the, maybe one Ouya just because. I've kind of a weird obsession with that. But
what do you mean? What do you mean one? How many do you have?
I have all the variations, including development console and 4 controllers. So there's a white one, there's a black one, there's a copper one, there's a silver one, there's an engraved one with notch. In fact, I have it here. It's engraved.
Oh my god.
It's engraved. It's hard to see, but like it's engraved with like the big funders of the time. But anyways, that's been a cool little, I don't know, like to me that was kind of a cool special experience. I did some gaming clubs when that came out and got to see kids that normally didn't get to smile, and people on the spectrum, and playing Towerfall, which was a lot of people don't know Towerfall originated on the Ouya. That was their big hit. And for people that don't know, Towerfall is like an 8-bit Smash Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And, wonderful game. But anyways, just stuff like that. Stuff I would play. Nice thing about Ouya I use on my YouTube channel is to play homebrew and aftermarket games. And so I'll get a ROM or something of a homebrew game and it just plays fine on that. And it doesn't take up a lot of space. So
shame that we can't find them anywhere now.
Yeah, I mean they can't. They're still around. You can get them used, and there's private servers that have fully activated everything in the Ouya library, which is most known for its emulation. And there's emulator boxes that are way better, but I still like playing on the Ouya.
I'll be honest, I forgot about Ouya for a while, for a little bit now. I mean, it's a shame. Like bringing on like a new console in a gaming space, it seems to be very difficult nowadays. Yeah. I know like Ouya was one. Google Stadia, even though it's not really a console, it's still like a gaming platform, if you will, and they're having their issues, right?
Yeah, Amazon Luna.
Yeah, Amazon Luna, exactly. And I think like there's even one that's closer to like retro gaming, the Intellivision Amico, right?
Amico, yeah, the
Amico, yeah. So I've pre-ordered mine like I don't know a year ago, and I bought the limited edition.
Oh, the physical edition.
Yeah, the physical games. I got the games. They're on my shelf. Console nowhere to be found. So I don't know if it's gonna end up being like just the games and no console, but it's they keep pushing back the production, at least the delivery of these consoles. Why do you think it's so difficult to bring a new console in this gaming space?
Markets controlled by large corporations that have tons of money to throw at their game systems, and it's embedded. Like Nintendo's, their fan base grew up playing Game Boy, and it's been embedded in them. They've nurtured their fan base for years. And Microsoft, first it was Windows and gaming. And PCs, and then 2001 they started with Xbox, and they've slowly, really, I think the Series X is the best that they've done so far, and then you got PlayStation, which broke off. They started making games for other consoles, but then they made their own game console and established themselves as a powerhouse. And there's so much money and revenue behind those that anything else is a very small fish in a very big pond. And
do you think that'll ever happen again? Like a game maker making a successful console?
Yeah, it always does. I mean, you look at people really did not understand PlayStation when it came out. Like Sega was going to be the next big thing, and they screwed up. And it came, Sony came in and, hey, we're going to have a cheaper console. We're going to offer cheaper games. Honestly, Nintendo at the time, they going cart route, that kind of gave PlayStation the opportunity to be successful. They offered an affordable console that didn't have the best graphics, but offered affordable gaming. I worked at the GameStop during that time, and they were, families would walk in, they'd see the N64 side, and games would start at $40 and go up to 70. And then they would see PlayStation, and at the time, Greatest Hits had just started at $20. Let me tell you, if you're a family person at the time, there was no, unless you were a Nintendo franchise person, a lot of people gravitated to PlayStation because, all sorts of opportunities there. You play music CDs in the console at the time.
Yeah, the music was much better also on the PlayStation.
Music was better. Games were cheaper. They had, they just kind of were going a different route. And, and then Saturn came out. Saturn was already out, and then just really dropped the ball with price, and development was tough for it. And announcing the console, and it was out. And a lot of developers were like, what the heck's going on? And they were upset about that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons why, PlayStation made it. But yeah, I think it's going to happen again. I think the technology is always changing. So just because one company is dominating right now doesn't mean a company comes out of nowhere. Because I think augmented reality is going to be a big thing moving forward. Virtual reality is going to get better and better. And I think there's some other companies that are doing a good job. Facebook with the Oculus, got to experience one a little bit more in depth lately, and it's not perfect, but it's a thing.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good, I would say.
They're coming up with a sequel, and they're coming up with an augmented reality also. And so that, and Google could come out with something else. They got $1 bajillion. And so
and that's the thing. Maybe now we have those physical consoles with the controller and all that, but maybe as time moves on, virtual reality, augmented reality, Sony, PlayStation, Xbox, Meta with Google, they're all maybe coming to become all consoles, but VR consoles, AR consoles, and things like that. So yeah.
We're going to get away from screens, and it's going to be more in an interaction thing, I think. That's going to be the future, and whoever can dominate that and do a better job, that's who's going to win. And I think that as time moves forward, it's going to be more important on what works and and it all comes down to the best games. So what works, what is marketed the best, and what has the best games and the best service, that's what's going to win. It always does. Comes down to games. So... yeah, I know Nintendo has talked about being worried about after the Switch. What does their company look like? They've talked about that they worry about that, and rightfully so.
Well, the Switch typically have it they do a hit and not so hit, a hit and not so hit. They always have an off generation, it seems, right?
Yeah, the Switch 2 is going to be fine. It'll be the 4K Switch or Switch 2 or whatever that is. That's going to be amazing. It's going to do well. After that, when they move on from Switch.
Right.
How are people going to take that? Are they going to keep their store and all your digital games? Are they going to close it again? Because I'll tell you what, people get tired of that. That's why Microsoft's done what they've done. They've done the best job, I think, of all the three. Of not perfect. If you really want to talk about great, Steam.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah, Steam's the best for consoles. Xbox gets a pass. PlayStation's okay. I don't like how they have it set up. And Nintendo is just tough to navigate. The problem with Nintendo is they have a successful console, but their technology is just...
they're always behind a bit. Yeah.
It bothers me. It's
no, I
feel like I'm playing a 5-year-old tablet sometimes. And it's true. It is. It's 5-year-old technology, and I wish they would adapt folders, and there's just things that they should have already integrated into their system, and they haven't. And part of that's their culture, their business culture, Japanese business culture. That's why it is the way it is. But they know it. I think them being worried about their future is good, because it'll make them think about it now and do something about it.
Well, they've done some terrific things. So for me, and I've tweeted about it not too long ago, the Wii is the most underrated console of all time, in my opinion. It was such a breath of fresh air when that came out. It was so popular. I remember exactly the moment I turned it on, and I used those Wiimotes for the first time, and those nunchucks and all that. It was so amazing, and for them to go outside of what has been done in the past completely and use motion control and all that, they're able to do it. They're able to go above and beyond when it comes to the hardware technology. Now, software technology is is something else. It's not necessarily like the thing that they're the best at, but I'm excited to see what they're gonna do also moving forward. Like, because are they gonna go with something that's more in line with VR AR, or is that still gonna be handheld? Because now they mashed, because for the longest time they've had their handheld stuff, they had their home console stuff. Now they mashed the two together, so now they're doubling down on their console. If they release another one that's both, then, and it doesn't do well, because the Switch does really well, it's doing really well, like, they're going to be in financial troubles. I mean, I know they have a lot of cash. I mean, they're not going to be like, in real financial trouble, but their shareholders won't necessarily be the happiest, knowing that they don't have a 3DS or DS, to back them up, because the DS did so well back then.
Yeah, to me, I've identified them as a handheld company. They've done handhelds, the Game & Watch turned into Nintendo. Like, they've done console stuff, but really blending the two into one was really smart.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, Nintendo is the company that's long in the tooth, and they're going to have to just keep it fresh. The Switch ended up being a huge hit, and, I think it benefited from several things. And I think moving forward, they should be fine. They're going to be around. They're smart. I don't ever count them out. They do silly things sometimes, but they learn from their mistakes. And I think them even just acknowledging that they have to be careful moving forward, that excites me. I could totally see them doing AR. I think the challenge moving forward is technology and having it function and work is going to be super more important with future consoles. Nintendo has always been behind on functions and technology, and so having something good enough, like, they're kind of the McDonald's of game companies. I hate making that comparison, but it's true. They're not always the best, but they're everywhere, and people know them. They are iconic, and some of the things they do right better than anybody. And other things they don't do great, it doesn't really matter, because it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my simple way of explaining Nintendo.
Yeah. I don't know if, like, I have an example in mind of them maybe trying like AR stuff. Is the Mario Circuit Road or something, whatever it's called, the little Mario
car.
Yeah, with like the camera, and you could be on your Switch and controlling. And so to me, like, now that I'm thinking about and talking about this with you, it makes me think, like, was that something that they've done to even like test the market or see, like, even the technology, how people are like receiving that new product
stuff that came out?
Right, the true. What is the name for it?
Now, I did a post. I think I did a post, right? I want to say I did. Hey, show me all that cardboard stuff that you still have and you play with, and nobody commented. Right. Because it's collected. Someone's got a complete collection sealed, but that's not something you play, and it was kind of gimmicky. I think it might have been testing the market.
Yeah.
I think the whole they did that garage game app where you can program yourself. They're experimental, and I like that about Nintendo, and I think they'll have to keep that thinking to stay on top.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a risk, because if you could be experimental and then just bomb, which they have. And but they've only had a couple huge failures. Most of their stuff, even the N64, was moderately successful.
Oh yeah, of course. I love it, but it's not because it was success. I mean, it doesn't mean it was successful. It wasn't. Ultimately, it really wasn't. It was more about the fact that I was fond of the game that came with it. But financially, it wasn't a successful console for sure. No. And even technologically, like, it wasn't up to par with some of the other consoles that were. It
was good enough.
It was.
It had enough good games. People didn't care that it didn't have the good enough technology. People dealt with that controller because it had fun games to play. Mario Kart, Zeldas, GoldenEye, Smash Brothers. That top 20 for N64, great. And now you can play it on your Switch. for the most part. Not everything.
No,
We
yeah,
know GoldenEye. Don't know
yeah.
when we're gonna get that, but I know that's in limbo right now. But
Maybe a remaster from Xbox with Rare. I don't know. Just
that'd be
saying.
amazing. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I
I
don't know
mean,
why they're not. It's not out yet. It's like.
oh, it's because of the Ukraine war. That's why they've delayed it.
Oh,
There
really?
was an article on it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting. How many games do you have in your collection?
I haven't counted in years. Just know that I have about 34 collections complete with others that I have. 3DO. I have a crazy amount of 3DO stuff, and then television. I mean, there's other collections that aren't in that list of 34. Just got a Pippin, got an Apple Pippin in box. Osborne Computer. There's a bunch of weird stuff like that that's not in like a category that's like, okay, that's interesting. And I just want to be remembered as the person that uh, worked really hard to try to amass a collection and then wanted to offer it to the public to just appreciate. And my name doesn't have to be plastered to it. I had some help. Yes, I collected about 95% of it myself.
Hmm.
Spent thousands of dollars over the years. The majority of my YouTube goes to buying games. Uh, some saved, but some is just essentially to upkeep or to get stuff I'm missing. Um, some of that's a write off, of course, but still, like people don't realize But it's tough because when you go public, you announce something. There's always going to be judgmental fools out there that say all sorts of crazy stuff or don't have the whole story. And I wasn't ready for any of that. Now I've got my thick skin, whatever. But back when it started, that was tough, just because I didn't know any of that was out there. But public opinion can be pretty interesting sometimes. You can have the best intentions, and it doesn't matter. The pitchforks and knives come out, and if you don't do it right, then it can swallow you if you don't handle it correctly.
What are some of the toughest challenges you've had to overcome over the years?
Just keeping true to what I wanted and intended to do all along, and not listening to people that don't matter.
Hmm.
There's gonna be people out there that have all sorts of opinions, and that doesn't matter. It really doesn't. They're just internet trolls or noise, or people that don't bring value to the community. If you're trashing everybody else and have hate and have all this unhappiness in your own life, go to a therapist or get your head checked. Go take care of yourself. If you are souring the environment of others on an ongoing basis, it's because you are hurting yourself. And I hope those people get help. And they're out there. And even it doesn't have to be towards games, but if you're like just kind of puking on other people all the time, that's a problem. And it's a problem because coming from a background of mental health, that there's reasons why that's happening. And I see it all the time, and there's been times in my life when I've gotten kind of miserable, and I found myself doing that. So
Hmm.
I can relate, because I haven't, everybody sees the persona of me being the happy-go-lucky person, which I try to be and try to share and give positivity to others, but I'm a human being like everybody else. I've had my ups and downs, and I've learned, and I've been gratified and supported by the positivity of others. Talking to people at expos, the community in general has been wonderful. There are occasional person that gets a bee in my bonnet, but that's okay. That comes along with the territory, and just dealing with that, and just like, okay, you're not getting what I'm doing, and nor do they want to. They have a set opinion that's not going to change. And these people are typically pretty cowardly, and they'll say stuff online, but they would never say it to you in person.
So that we can, and our listeners can better relate to what you're saying about you actually being on that chair at some point in your life, right? Being maybe the sour person, if you want to put it that way, maybe.
Dealt with depression in my life.
What was, could you give us an example of how you felt at that time and what you did?
Wow. Oh, it was a dark place. I didn't have a job. I moved from California to Washington and took a social work job that was just horrendous. And it was not what I wanted to do. It was it's terribly organized, and I left my family and all my friends. The weather was impacting me. I was used to a sunny climate, and I was not doing well. I was not used to clouds and overcast and not seeing a sun for 60 days, and that was tough. Um, Went and got help. Talked to a therapist, got some medicine. It was temporary, wasn't it? And I'm not ashamed of that. Had some therapy and worked through it, and got to the core root of some of the issues. And my employment situation got better, and my wife was super supportive and was able to get through that and bounced. So I can relate just by saying you got to take care of yourself, just like your health. Your mental health is just part of that, and it can impact you. And sometimes you're in such a bad place that you don't even know you're in a bad place. Someone has to say, "Hey, are you okay?" When really they're saying you're not okay, but they're doing it in a nice way and wanting you to get some help.
Yeah.
But yeah, what? I'm okay with saying I struggle with depression, and that was years ago though. But it um, and it's just knowing when you're in not a great place to do something about it. If you don't do something about it and you're not in a good place, it can get really bad. Um, there's a lot of people out there that struggle with mental illness and mental health, and not to be ashamed of it, and to know that there's professionals that you can seek help for, or friends, or even if you want to go the non-professional route, churches or groups, or even just friends. But there's certain things that if it gets worse, though, you should seek professional help. I do encourage that if the other avenues are not working.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's going to different. That whole aspect is different for everybody. It's like a car. It's like anything else. You got to find something that works for you. One therapist or one way is not going to work for everybody. That's why there's multiple avenues and ways. And I found something that worked for me, and it was what I needed to get through a season. But that was years ago, over a decade. Pre-COVID was pretty tough. Kind of found going through some things, but I was able to same thing. Just talk to the therapist, and things got better. So that's it. And for some people out there, they may not even consider that an option. For other people, maybe in the States, for sure, insurance is an issue. That's expensive. And so I wish our medical system was different here. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, it is interesting
but
one
it
though.
is.
But
It impacts people seeking professional help. It's not like you go down the street and just say, "Hey, I want some help." It's not easy. Intakes take a long time. I did the field. I was in the field for 10 years. I get it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, John. Though the mental health system here in Canada, as an American, a lot of Americans think like, oh, in Canada it's like it's free and it's great. It is great, but if you want to get free mental health in Canada, you're on the waiting list, my friend.
I've heard
you're waiting for a while.
I've heard that it's affordable, but it takes time. So I know it's got problems too, but it's
not affordable. It's free. It can be free, but it's crazy. You have to wait.
As an American, I hearing that is like, I mean,
well, yeah, but you have to wait a lot. So I actually went and saw a therapist for a while as well, and I wasn't, frankly, like, I think it's the hardest thing to say, I need help or I want help, because needing help is, I mean, it's one way to put it, but like, I want help, wanting to get better, I think, is the first step, right?
Yeah.
And you also don't need to be, necessarily at the very bottom as well. I wasn't in the bottom when I started seeing my therapist a few years back. I just wanted to work on some things that I knew I wanted to get better at, and I agree that it's better to ask for help, whatever type of help it is, than to stay at home and alone and sad.
Yeah, I mean, just recently knew someone that took their life, and it sucks because it's one of those things where they were in a place where they didn't feel like there was anybody to listen, and you know, uh, this pandemic has impacted people in not the necessarily best way, mental health wise, and drug addiction's up, and suicide's up, and just that if you're feeling having thoughts, reach out to somebody. You know, I would want you to tell someone that if you're having an issue, and that's a tough thing because as a teenager, I felt like an odd duck. Like I was popular physically of how I looked, but mentally in my mind, I felt like I was not part of any group. I felt like an outcast. And I've learned and adapted that, like, that's kind of the cool thing about the gaming community is, like, it's okay if you're an odd duck because we're all odd ducks.
Yeah, that's true.
But communication wise, I find I come across a lot of people that, I'm an extrovert and an introvert. A lot of people don't know I'm both. But there's a lot of people out there that don't have the communication to be able to tell someone that they're hurting or tell someone that they have problems or even know where to begin. And I feel for those people because you can be trapped. You can be trapped and I don't know. I was able to navigate it just because of my background, with a master's in psychology, like I mentioned before, I believe, and just knowing the lingo and knowing where to go and stuff is important. But yeah, it's helped me just being aware of kind of my highs and lows, and I got a great support group now. I have several friends. I've a small group of friends that I can call and talk to, and I typically do on a regular basis, just telling them how I'm really doing, And I have a buddy who is a content creator as well, and like I am able to kind of unload on him all my just kind of where I'm at with things, of just like a video or a feeling or and that's great, just to having that person where I can just kind of lean on and just say, hey, this is what's going on, this is how I'm really doing.
Yeah, going back to your point about money not meaning a lot for you, like not being the number one thing that why you're doing what you're doing, I think like having someone that you can talk to and tell how you're really feeling, to me that's wealth in a way. That's being rich in a way. It's because it's something that's quite rare
when you get someone that gets you too.
Yep.
And I got some close friends. They know me pretty good. They know when I'm doing good, and they know when I'm probably not doing so good. And typically I'm doing pretty good. I've been doing pretty good for a while, but there's those days. We all have those days. I had one yesterday, and things just weren't clicking. And
what happened yesterday?
This homebrew project's been a nightmare.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Nothing. I didn't lose my job or any of that, just
right.
Spending 6 hours on something and it just not working and frustrating. But, I had someone to talk to. I had someone on speed dial I could or Facebook message or whatever, and I could vent. I know that some people out there don't have that. So like it impacts me in a healthy way of just like being able to communicate to someone, but I don't want people to know, like, I'm human just like everybody else, and I have ups and downs, and I try to spread positivity on my channel just because I know that there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of that in their life, or they're reminded on a daily basis that things aren't great, because I know things aren't great. I don't need a reminder of that, and so I try not to remind people of that on my channel, of just offering, let's just go here. Let's go here and talk about this, and maybe it'll brighten your day.
Yep. I think you've been doing a tremendous job at that as well. It's you said it well. I think the gaming industry, the gamers in general, we feel like odd ducks as well. A bunch of us, and I was at an event recently with a bunch of game devs. There were a few marketing people, but all working in the gaming industry, and I was like, awesome. My God, like, we're so lucky to work in this industry. because we get to work with people that we share for sure a passion with 100%, you know, and and I feel the same way as you. We're all odd ducks, and I think we get along with most other gamers, I think, in general. So
Yeah. Growing up, and I think as you get older, you're able to navigate things a little bit, or you got kids, like you said, or just having that maturity, and the older John can communicate a lot better than the younger John could. I don't know if I could in my early college days communicate to anybody what was going on in my head, and even being an extrovert, I had a girlfriend at the time was pretty understanding, and she helped me through some things. But as I got older, my wife, who have been married 20 years, has been amazing. She'll know exactly how I'm doing. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? And so,
well, that's a great way to. Well, yeah, it's a great way to segue into the next segment. Actually,
yeah,
we want to know more about your wife, because the next one is called "Explain This Tweet," and we have a tweet from July 13th, which is you and your wife, and you've celebrated your 20 years anniversary. So congratulations!
Thank you
for that. That's amazing. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just wanted to bring it was a great way to segue into this segment.
I can ramble. I can ramble like anybody.
Please. Well, tell us more about your wife and the impact she had on your passion. I think that's the number one thing, because I'll tell you something. As a collector myself, and I probably have 1/10 of your collection if I'm lucky. She's not she's not a gamer, she's not a collector, and she understands my passion, but she doesn't want my stuff to be laying around everywhere. So
it sounds familiar.
Tell me more about your relationship you have, and especially the relationship your wife has with your collection.
Yeah, I think early on, she knew I was a collector. She knew I was into games and Star Wars, and we balance. So we did premarital counseling, which helped quite a bit. And the reason why I say that is it really got you educated on what you were getting into. Like for me, marriage for my wife will be till I die. That's my personal belief. I know for others, it means something else. But for me, my wife is my life and my partner for life that I'm willing to work through anything with. And that is, they get to know someone on a very intimate level, on a personal level, your ins and outs, your ups and downs. And she really is just a great person who understands me to the 10th degree. And on top of her mental health background, she's a director of a women's shelter. And so, we were two peas in a pod. And what, going back to her, she understood the collection. The collection to her, she knows that it means a lot to me. She's not a collector herself. She knows the museum is a big, important thing for me and has supported me doing that. She knows that is the end goal. And she wants that. I think the big thing, too, is people don't realize, this takes up a lot of space. And part of the reason wanting getting out of the house is that, get a garage back. The studio will look different as time moves forward, hopefully. But, that's, in a way, it's supporting that so that we can continue to have a life together, that we're not anchored by this collection in this house. I think that it would be some freedom in a way. She knows that, but more importantly, she lets me be me. If someone's telling you need to be this way for me to be with you, on one hand I could see that, but she's given me a lot of freedom of me just being a gamer and a collector. But I've also respected and honored her by not going into debt with spending, having a separate budget for buying games. I don't use checking for anything I buy. I have a separate account, and It's typically a YouTube fund that's buying something or something that way. Like and then when that's done, it's done. Like it's okay. And we share our money. Some couples don't. We share things 100%. Any big purchases, I would still talk to her. And that's kept my marriage healthy, on top of me investing time and energy into keeping that marriage, talking to her, honoring her goals and dreams. What are your hopes and dreams? I heard this from a panel a long time ago. Like, you got to really invest back into your partner. It can't be all about you and your collection and all that. And if everything you're doing is around that, then you are not sharing your life with someone else. They are giving up their life for you, and that's a big problem. And that will destroy a marriage more than anything. Money, one of the biggest arguments in marriage, and so that's how I navigate things. There's times I've been great at it, and there's times I've needed help, but knowing when to say sorry when you screw up, you know.
No.
If you have an issue with someone, I think the bigger issue too is if you have an issue with someone, bring it up with them, not hiding it. And the communication is so important long term, being with someone and being able to like dig into a problem. One thing that we've worked on lately is having time for one another, and it doesn't have to be a full day because she works full time, you know, and I'm busy. I'm always going to be busy doing something. I'm just one of those people. I'm always doing 2 or 3 things, but making time for one another and talking about things, especially with kids and appointments and schedules and all that. But yeah, that's what she is to me. She's everything. She's someone I want to share my life with the rest of my life, and you know, it's just been wonderful. She's everything you would want in a partner and more. And anybody who meets her says that.
Well, we salute her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. The next tweet we have is about maybe one that's a bit more controversial, I would say.
Okay.
From June 7th, where you say there's a picture of GameStop on a glass in front of the store, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you say, good for them. I worked for GameStop back in the day, and it was bad then. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes. And I think it's a bigger kind of theme, and I'm happy to talk about it. But I think as a society, we have to do a better job at taking care of people. I'll start there. I think the days of people grinding at a job for 30 years are over. And I think there's a lot of people that are paid minimum wage. And this is looking at kind of corporate. I'm looking at corporate kind of society. And people are saying, you know what, enough's enough. You know, when the top corporations are making the top percentage of people are making so much, and the bottom part of the worker bees are not making as much, and it's a grind. And I get it, there's, you know, a wage and all that, but the bigger theme is we have a lot of people, a smaller portion of people making more of the total revenue of the world, and they're not doing a good job dispersing that and sharing their wealth, and that is a problem. Okay, it's a problem with our society. I don't know the easy fix. If someone wants to make $1 bajillion, that's fine. But when you're not giving back and you have more money than your grandkids and great grandkids can spend, that's a problem. And it's a problem, and I don't know an easy fix. But so going back to GameStop, it was a terrible environment. Okay, I would never work there again. I had a district manager that was asking me to go to KB Toys to buy their PlayStations out and bring them over to GameStop and mark them up. And this is 20 years ago. Now, I don't think that was corporate telling me what to do. That was her. She was terrible to work for. It's, you know, people think games is a fun job. It's not. But it's a bigger issue on just we're going to pay you minimum wage. You're going to do this job. You know, and GameStop's maybe not the best example, but stick up for yourself. Stick up for rights that are reasonable and wages that are reasonable. You're not going to want to ask for $28 an hour when that's not your field. But I support unions. I support people organizing and advocating for themselves. It's nice to see the gaming industry kind of being open to that finally. You know, crunch time is a whole other controversy. But there's a problem in general with people not taking care of organizations. I think we've let regulation go to the point where we kind of leave it up to these big companies to take care of people. And they're not doing a great job. And I think there's a growing amount of people saying, you know what? We're done with your crap. And I say, you know what? Good for you, because the only way things are going to change is when a majority of people say, you know what? We're tired of this. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it for that. And standing up for themselves. We've pride on people's generosity, especially in compassion fields such as teaching. I'm going to say it. Where we kind of expect people to give up their time and effort and do this and that for free over and over and over again beyond what's reasonable, to the point where enough people now are going to say, you know what, not going to do it. And surprise, surprise, you have less people now are having a hard time finding people to work. You know why? Because people are tired of that. For the new generation, you know, and on one hand people say, well, they're just lazy. Well, maybe they're just standing up for what they need to be paid for. Like, and I advocate people for that within reason, but it bothers me. And I say, good for those to stand up and to say, if it's not reasonable, don't do it. And there's balance. There's asking for too much. There's being greedy. There's being lazy. There's that as a controversy. And I'm not talking about that, but I'm just talking in general about how there's enough wealth that I think we could do a better job at just taking care of people. I see our society right now is sick. We're sick because we're not healthy. Our mental health is not being taken care of. And as a society, we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to fix that? And who's going to fix that? And whose responsibility is to fix that? Is it the corporations that make a ton more than they ever can spend? Or is it somebody else? More importantly, we got to get together and have a discussion about it and not get too political and be able to work it out. And that's a bigger problem because right now we're not in that place. We want to point the finger at other, you know, two sides pointing the finger at each other saying, it's your fault, it's your fault. Oh, we can go down this road.
Yeah, we are.
We can go down this road.
That's great. To give context, the image that you posted, it's from the employees of the GameStop.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That are saying basically we all quit.
Yeah, we all quit.
We all quit.
We're
so
done.
they were done. They put that on the glass and they just left, and they were like, go to these other places. Yep.
Yeah, and
where you can buy your games.
Yeah, and so the big thing is like, you know, there's too many companies that are treating people like a number. You're gonna do this medial service. We don't give a shit about you, and they don't. They've relied on just cheap workforce, just your replacement. We can fill you in with somebody else. And if enough people say, you know what, then you can just take this job and shove it. Yep. Good for you. And we need to do that when the expectations are unreasonable. Because if enough people organize and stand up to a company and say, you know what, we're not going to deal with this because this is unreasonable. And I'm speaking about unreasonable expectation. I'm not saying don't do a job. But if the job is really paying low, don't do it. Don't take it.
I think there's a shift in like how an employee's expectation, which is great, and also slowly an employer's understanding of how they should be treating employees. And I'm the keyword here is slowly, because unfortunately it is quite slow, but it's also normal for it to be slow because it's been a certain way for so long, and things don't change that fast. It takes a while, but a younger generation of employers, and I hope I'm part of that that group, are changing the way employees are treated, and how they're being paid, and how much vacation they get, how much, how do you say, social different social perks, if you will, that they get, and so on. So it's just but it's, you're right. I think things change when certain groups are put in a situation where they cannot function anymore, in a way. That's kind of like how things work.
So I have a vivid experience of what really impacted my perception of this. I worked at a place, I won't say where. I was selling shoes. I'll just say it. Selling shoes. And I worked there. Did everything they ever asked. I was on time. I was prompt. I was professional. I didn't call in sick. I did everything asked of me. And at the end of the year, I had my year evaluation, and I got a 10-cent raise. And, they had this little evaluation system, and you did this, you did this. And I said, are you kidding me? You can take this job and shove it. Quit. Walked out.
What year was that?
Huh?
What year was that?
1997.
Yeah, 10 cents. It's wow. That's,
I went from $4.25 to $4.35. And I said, you know what? If that is my merit increase, then I quit.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
Out. I just said nope, and then walked down the street and got something for $5 an hour.
There you go.
And so
that's what people are doing during this whole pandemic. Like, you're like, oh, we don't have like enough people. I'm like, why did your people leave?
Yeah,
I understand there's some like restoration, like the food and the service industry, like they've had issues because they had to close down. That's something else completely, right? I don't want to mix things up, but sometimes, like, if people are leaving en masse, you have to ask yourself, why is that? More. Especially if they don't come back.
And the other thing too, I think just in general, is if you're profiting and you're relying on volunteer work, or you need to pay I think there needs to be balance of, like, should you pay more? And sometimes there's not a check and balance in companies. Like, they just get away with what they can get away with for as long as they can until there's an issue. It's not, it's too much reactionary and not enough preventative in our society in general.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Companies are reacting to people walking out, not being preventative by saying, we need to pay you more so that we can look long term, so we have a healthy company and look long term. Now, there's companies doing that. And this doesn't speak to the independent little person that's just trying to barely have an employee, or they're, but, in general, things cost more. Okay.
Yep.
If you're making a healthy, reasonable profit and you need workers to work for you, you got to ask yourself, do I want someone for 6 months, or do I want them for 6 years? And how do I get that 6-year employee? Well, you take care of them. You treat them like a human being. You
don't wait for them to ask for a raise. You give them one, right?
You give them one if they deserve it.
If they, of course.
I think people have to prove themselves. There's a lot of bad workers out there too. And And wife has dealt with that and told me horror stories, but they've learned too. And like I like what you said about, this is a slow process. But until people in droves say, you know what, that's a big no. And I love seeing it. Honestly, I have a good friend, and we're like two peas in a pod on this. And my current work takes care of me, and I think they take care of me because it's unionized, and there's a check and balance system in place where they work together. And I don't think if I didn't have that, if I didn't have a group of people advocating for me, it would be like that. And I'm thankful for that. So I experienced that, and I've been part of I was a part of a bad union, and it was terrible. Community mental health was
union doesn't mean it's going to be great either.
I'm part of a good union. I was part of a bad union. unions don't mean, but like I think organizing together though, whatever that looks like, is important because I can tell you I worked at a place and it was rough in more than one place, and it was just like we're gonna pay you this. One of the best places I worked with was employee owned,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great because it was very straightforward. I'll say with I worked for Winco Foods back in the day, employee
Right.
owned, and it was very straight up. And I know I have friends that still work there, and it was just it was reasonable. They had reasonable wages. They had reasonable steps. I have some friends that work at Costco, and they seem pretty happy there because, from what I've heard, they were taken care of and they were looked at as human beings.
Well, I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
If you're an employer and you don't do everything you can to keep your good employees around, you shouldn't be in business. You have no business in business. I'll say it like that
Yeah.
because, and you've said it well. Employees, there's a lot of bad employees.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not so much that they're necessarily bad. Maybe they're not doing the right thing. You know, it's like maybe they should be doing something else. But and bad employees, you know, yeah, you shouldn't necessarily keep them around, and you shouldn't necessarily give them a raise and whatnot. But the good ones, you have to because they're really rare, and you want them around. And hiring that, like getting another
Yeah.
great or good employee to join and to replace that one that's going to leave because you don't treat him well is going to cost you a lot more than whatever raise you should have given that first good employee. So it's a lack of vision. I agree. I think it's like, but I think it's human nature as well to wait for the disaster. We're a bit like in denial sometimes, human beings, right? Aren't we? We do something until we crash and burn, and then we just stand up and like, oh shit, I should do something now. I should change the way I behave because I just hit a wall.
Yeah.
And I think like it shows sometimes when it comes to like companies, because guess what? A company is like a bunch of people doing stuff. So it's still part of, I think, companies or corporations.
Yeah, and I've worked for several jobs, have done things in many fields, and I'll tell you the places I didn't stick around is when I felt like a number,
Mm-hmm.
and the places that cared about me. I worked at a university, and it really was because my boss was awesome. My boss was amazing, and I didn't even call him my boss. I mean, he was like I could go to him, and I felt supported. And I did that job for 5 years. I drove 2 hours and 30 minutes twice a week for 5 years
Wow.
because of my boss. Because I felt valued, and I felt like I had some freedom to give, and it was great. The reason I left it was because I got a day job, and it was incompatible with my schedule.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of
I taught 2
travels, but you
classes,
still,
Portland Community College.
yeah,
Yeah.
you kept it for 5 years. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
That's pretty nuts.
Helped pay for the studio. That's how the studio got.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
Talking
Saved
about
all my money on
full-time jobs.
What'd you say?
Talking about full-time jobs.
Oh yeah.
We're moving on to another segment called Audience Questions.
Okay.
And we have one here. What do you think of the best way to implement gaming in a busy schedule? I work full-time, often overtime hours, have a wife, 3 kids. Gaming has always been a passion of mine, but lately it's been increasingly difficult to find the time. How does the immortal John Hancock do it?
You got to make a schedule. You got to work with your family. What's best for them? What's best for you? Schedule it. So scheduling is very important. If you don't schedule, it's not going to happen. So I'm a teacher, so I have summers off. So I have a little bit of time, but that's kind of I fill my schedule up all the time. Like I got things I'm already thinking about now after this. And so scheduling a time, working with your family, what's best for them, what's best for you, putting it in and making it happen. And picking things that are gonna like the best. What's the best use of your time? What's the best game that's gonna work with that time? That's what I would do. And I find it all the time. One of the challenges I have is just moving on to other things all the time. I can't just stick with one game for a year. It's impossible. It really is impossible. And it'd be impossible for anybody in my situation. I try to value and appreciate what I have, and I'll dig stuff out randomly sometimes and play it. But yeah, it's great.
I'll add to what you said, which I completely agree with. Schedule your gaming time, but also schedule your family time, I would say.
You have to.
I think it's important. Yeah. It's like, okay, time with the wife, time with the kids, not just schedule your own stuff, because it goes back to the point.
Yeah, your kid time and your wife time need to be separate too, because that is
it's not the same. It's not the same.
If you're hanging out with your family and you're not really talking with anybody, and they're on their phones or tablets or games, like that doesn't count. Okay,
it should be called quality time.
Yeah, quality time. So like
quality time with the wife, quality time with the kids.
Go to coffee, do a mini date, or you don't even have to go anywhere. Even just like going out, if your kids are older. I mean, this can be a challenge with sitting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Go out to a vehicle, like just get into a vehicle or out in the parking lot or in a place that's away from little ears, and have a conversation, and just how's your day, and don't use good and fine. Like find out how your day really was. Tell me something about your day. Is there anything I can do for you? What are your needs right now? Those are all good questions. Not just checking off the box to ask too. Just like
$20 doesn't work. Like, what do you need right now? $20. That's not what we're looking for here.
And not being on your phone when they're talking to you, or distracted by screens, I say that because it's so important. We're like constantly attached to some form of media these days.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You gotta unplug. You gotta unplug every now and then. It's really important.
I mean, I'm feeling it all the time. The urge to grab my phone. I'm fighting it all the time. I feel it. I think it's something I really want to work on. Frankly, it's crazy. Second question. Hey, John, I got an interesting one for you. Okay. If you were to get stuck on a desert island for a month, what are 3 objects you would bring with you, and why?
3 objects to bring with me on a desert island
for a month.
Well, I mean, of course, phone. Phone, and I guess I'll cheat. I'll say phone with like some type of solar paneling to charge it. So then
is that 2 objects though?
Yeah, that's 2 objects.
Okay.
Because my phone could be my radio, my YouTube, and all that. So, and then the third thing, I'll just say shelter, like a tent.
Wow. So shelter. No games.
No. Well, I could play games on my phone, but it'd be mostly the phone would be for talking to my wife.
Interesting.
And my friends.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, if it came down to 3 things, I'm not going to think about games. I'm probably going to think about survival. I'm probably going to think about, if it came down to survival, the games is,
secondary. Yeah.
And I have my phone, so I could play some. I don't play a lot of phone games, but I have that, so that's.
Oh, you could, yeah, of course.
I guess I could technically do Xbox Cloud gaming through my phone.
Don't bring your Switch though, because if there's no Wi-Fi, you can't play your game.
You're screwed. It's Nintendo though. You don't have to worry about online.
Okay, so rapid fire segment. Okay, we got 15 questions.
Okay.
2 possible answers per question. Don't think, just answer.
Okay.
Let's go. Movies or documentaries?
Documentaries.
Crocs or slippers?
Slippers.
Would you rather eat a snail or a crab?
Crab.
Teaching or YouTube?
Oh, like if I had a choice?
Yeah.
YouTube.
Forget your wedding anniversary or forget your wife's birthday?
Anniversary.
No haircut for a year or no shower for a month?
Ew. No shower for a month.
Subway footlong or 6 inches?
Footlong.
Football or soccer?
Oh, football. American football.
Would you rather lead a minimalist life or be a hoarder?
Minimalist.
Be a caveman or be a jungle man?
Caveman. It's inside.
Ice cream or slushies?
Ice cream.
Drink water or breathe air?
Breathe air.
Would you rather meet your great-great-grandchildren or your great-great-grandparents?
Grandchildren. Great-great-grandchildren.
Grape juice or cranberry juice?
Cranberry. Cranberry juice. You can mix it.
Movies which becomes games or games which becomes movies?
First one.
Movies which becomes games.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's it. 15 questions done.
Yeah.
Man, it's been an absolute ride today, John.
Yeah.
I feel privileged to have had the chance to talk to you, get to know you a bit better.
Yeah.
I really think that we talked a bit about topics that I expected we would talk about, but also many other things that I think we allowed ourselves to go a bit deeper in certain topics, which I always enjoy. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for doing this with me, with us, sharing all those stories and your thoughts on all those matters. So I invite every single one of you guys listening to check out John. He's on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. YouTube, John Hancock. On Twitter, it's SW Lovinist.
Stands for
Not
Star Wars.
Lovinist.
Yeah. Stands for Star Wars Lovinist, but yes, SW Lovinist. Yep.
There we go. And also the immortal _John _Hancock on Instagram, guys. Go check him out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on who you want us to interview next. We're back every Tuesday. Stick around. And guys, we'll see you soon in the next episode of Streamforge Radio.